Hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch this brief recording about GCEA's upcoming rate design change, which will go into effect at the beginning of the year. I'm Mike McBride, CEO, and I have two objectives for this presentation. First, to provide an overview of GCEA's cost structure and the reasons for the change. And secondly, to give you some insight into how this rate change might affect you. Spoiler alert, if you have a typical usage pattern, that is a relationship of your peak demand to your average demand of about 4.3 to 1, you'll see no difference in your average monthly bill. More to come on that later in the presentation. So first of all, GCEA is not-for-profit, cost-based, and member-owned, and this rate design change is not a rate increase. GCEA collects the same total amount in rates. And once again, if your usage pattern is typical, you'll see little, if any, difference in your total bill. In full disclosure, however, this change does not create a rate increase, no additional collections for GCEA, but we are experiencing rising costs. And we will be implementing also at the beginning of the year a rate increase. As soon as that number is finalized, we will publish that information so that you're aware of that. As much as we hate to have rate increases, we are experiencing rising costs, as are you, and we need to collect those costs through rates. More to come on that in later publications. So if I can start here with an overview of GCEA's rate structure, the right side of this pie chart is our wholesale power cost. The left side of this chart is all of the other expenses that we incur to provide service, to deliver electricity to you and provide the services that we do. Back to the right side, the wholesale energy, this is the actual cost for the energy that we consume. The next slice here, labeled wholesale demand, that is our fee for utilizing the transmission system and the generation resources that are in the ground in place to provide electricity when we need it. This next slice is the cost of owning, operating, and maintaining the local distribution system, the poles and the wires and the materials and the equipment and staff to repair and replace and maintain as needed. The next slice is all other business operations. So accounting, reporting, billing, collections, meter reading, compliance, everything else related to keeping the doors open. So if we go back here to the wholesale energy, I wanted to point out a couple of things. We get most of our power from Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association, also a not-for-profit cooperative. We do have, through our contract with Tri-State, the ability to produce some locally and through other means, and we're taking advantage of those when they make sense. The Taylor River Hydro Project, the generation at the Taylor Dam, is actually saving us money. It's only 3% of our power supply, but that power is cheaper than what we buy power from Tri-State for. The two solar projects that we're building this year are not quite break even on their face, but through creative mechanisms, we've been able to bring them into line, into cost parity with our Tri-State rates, utilizing sale of renewable energy credits and the PowerWise Pledge funds. Those projects are not adding cost. They're producing power with those transactions at the same price we would be paying Tri-State for them. We've entered into 5-year contracts for those two projects. And at the end of 5 years, we're hoping, we believe, that the cost of power will have gone up and we'll be able to actually extend those contracts at a price that is actually, again, saving us money. So that's a play for the future. The wholesale demand charges, we get billed these, again, this is for the greater grid, everything that brings power in from all over into our substations. And this is billed or allocated to us through a demand charge. Our highest 30 minutes of use each month creates a charge on our bill, our wholesale demand charge, and this is our highest single charge. The energy charge, also, I would mention that because the costs on the left side of this graph are fixed, they don't go up if we sell more electricity, and they don't go down if we sell less. It provides us both a challenge and an opportunity. If we sell less electricity, we have to recover these costs over fewer kilowatt hours. Conversely, if we can sell more electricity, we can recover these costs, spread these costs over more kilowatt hours. So while the total cost does not go down, the cost per kilowatt hour can go down if we can sell more electricity. And that's one of the main reasons that we are promoting things like electric vehicles, air source heat pumps, and other forms of what we call beneficial electrification, where members can choose to use electricity instead of some other fuel, lower their total energy cost, but improve GCEA's cost recovery and help us lower our bills as well. Down here in the wholesale demand charge, the way you can help us to lower this cost and thereby lower rates is through helping us manage that peak demand. And that's one of the reasons for, well, it's the big reason for implementing this new rate design change. So again, if we can lower our demand charges, we can lower our retail rates. We will lower our retail rates. The new rate design change incentivizes actions that can help us do that. And at the same time, it provides you with two ways to control your bill. In the past, you could only lower your bill by using less. That's still an option. But you can also now lower your bill by choosing when you use it and trying to lower that peak demand. Other presentations will give you ideas on how to do that. This is just a quick little overview of, or a visual on what our usage pattern is throughout the year. You can see we use more in the winter, less in the summer. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone. The height of the bar, though, shows the fluctuations throughout the days. And I'll drill in on that a little bit here by looking at April of 2024. Each day has two peaks and two valleys. We peak in the morning, followed by our lowest point being during the day, with an evening peak and then an overnight low. So that's the typical pattern every day throughout the year. 9 months out of the year, the morning peak is typically higher than the evening peak, but it's the evening peak that we get billed on. And here you can see on April 6th, the evening peak was actually higher than the morning peak. This was the amount that we paid our wholesale demand charges on in April. If I look at our cost recovery versus our cost structure versus our rate structure as it currently exists, our energy charge, our kilowatt hour charge in our cost, our wholesale power bill is only 21% of our total cost, whereas it's 71% of our revenue. That can have a few effects. It sends a signal that's flawed to you about what it costs to actually consume energy, and it can mismatch cost recovery with cost. In other words, if you have like a January that's excessively cold, we'll collect more. This piece of the pie, the energy charges that we collect through rates, will go up more than our cost goes up, and we'll collect more revenue than we need in that month. That's not something we're trying to do. Conversely, if January were warmer than normal, we would collect less than we need. Going into the rate itself, ultimately we're shooting for a $7.50 per kW demand charge. I think I mentioned it earlier, but if I didn't, if as that rate goes up, the kilowatt hour charge goes down. We're trying to collect the same amount of revenue through all of the charges on the bill in total. So, and of course, this doesn't include inflation, which we'll surely have, but beginning in 2026, we're going to have a $1 demand charge. This will give you the ability to watch your bill and see how it's affecting you. And then you'll be able to better plan for what steps you might want to take to maximize your benefits, minimize your costs from this rate structure. And to be clear, this applies to one single hour of the month, not every hour within the peak window. It's the highest usage within the peak window, but it's only one. It's the one highest hour of the month. So it's not recharged on remaining hours the usage in the remaining hours. Let me show you an actual bill to illustrate. This is an actual member bill. The identifying information has been removed, and with the member's permission, I'm sharing it. A couple of things to note. Our current peak period is 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for someone on a time of use rate. This will change. It'll be 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., so a shorter window to worry about, and it's Monday through Saturday. On your bill, you'll see, and I think some of the terminology will be improved slightly on the bill, but you'll see the peak demand for this member was 5 kW. It occurred on March 30th at 6 o'clock. This will be changed to read 6 p.m. going forward. This member used 746 kilowatt hours for the month. That was a load factor. Average demand divided by peak demand. The way you get average demand is take your total kilowatt hour consumption divided by the hours in the month. In this case, 744 hours for a 31-day period. And that'll give you your average demand, which for this member was 1 kW. And then versus 5 kW, 20%, or a 5-to-1 relationship. If you recall, I said earlier that a 4.3-to-1 relationship would result in no additional charge on the bill. So this member is a little higher than that. So we can assume that they're going to see an increase. So let's see what that means. If you look at the current bill of $151 for April of 2025, if a $1 demand charge had been in place at that time, the member would have paid $1.38 more. If the full $7.50 demand charge had been in place at that time, the member would have paid $4.66 more. Under a time of use option, which will be available to everyone as an optional rate, there will be a different off-peak energy charge, kWh charge, and an on-peak kWh charge, off-peak and on-peak. And then the demand charge will be half as much. So with that rate structure for April, this member would have actually saved $10. And then lastly, in the peak demand, managing peak demand, if this member were able to reduce their peak demand by 1 kW from 5 to 4, they would have saved $3 versus the current bill, or almost $3. Now, I will caution that the decision about which one of these makes most sense for you shouldn't be made on a single month. So you can look at your historical usage, but we also have this period of 2026 with the $1 demand charge, which will give you the best look at what's actually happening in your situation. And, then you'll be able to make an informed decision, and our staff is willing to help you with that decision. I think it's important because I said you can't look at a single month. So I went and looked at this member's bills for an entire year. As you saw in April, their bill was $4.66 more. In December, January, and February, the months of their highest bills, their bills were actually lower. And on a 12-month total, they saved $1.63. So for all intents and purposes, out of a 12-month bill, no change, break even. And they were, at an average load factor of 21%, weighted average load factor of 25. So if you're in that range, lower 20% range, this won't affect you much. Again, another way to look at that, your peak demand is, or your peak hourly consumption is, 4.3 or less times greater than your average hourly consumption, then this rate might actually be better for you, or at least no worse. And if it's higher than that, again, we're providing the optional time of use rate, which might work better. We're also providing education on how you can use, be it off-peak charging for EVs, a battery, timers, behavioral differences to help you lower that peak demand as well, and take advantage of savings regardless of where you are right now in that relationship. So in summary, GCA's rates are driven by cost, and this change does not collect more revenue for GCEA. The energy rate will be lower because the demand charge is being added, and the new rate sends a better price signal to members who can then choose how you respond. Members who reduce their demand costs will reap the lion's share of the benefit, although GCA as a whole will benefit as well. And activities that could shift costs to other members are discouraged by the rate because there's an additional cost to members if they do that. And so overall, I think this helps us charge members fair rates and helps us to manage our cost and keep our rates down. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you soon at one of our member events. Take care.